Hello and welcome to part 2 of this review for completing quadratics and solving. This is going to be a lot harder to explain to you guys simply because it says solve using any method, which implies that there is more than one way to do a couple of these. Specifically, this first one, number 7, and number 9, there's all going to be at least one way to do it. And I'll be trying to show you multiple ways just, because some people prefer quadratic formula, some people prefer factoring. If it's factorable, I'll show you how. If it's quadratic formula, I'll show you how as well. These ones right over here, there's not necessarily multiple ways to do these ones. You kind of have to do it a certain way. So I just want to tell you that up front, that it does say to solve using any method. So if you do this one way, know that I'll accept it even if I would do it a different way. It doesn't matter. So what I would do in number 5, we'll start now, is I personally always think factoring is easy if it is factorable, because keep in mind some of them will not be factorable. So I would try to factor this first. I would say, is there anything that multiplies to 42 and adds up to negative 13? And I would take a couple of minutes to think about it. And at least for me, if nothing came out to me in like a minute, I'd probably just give up and go to quadratic formula. But it's me, I'm a nerd, I already know what it is. But I'm going to write out all my opportunities anyway, because that's what I do. So things that multiply to 42, I just start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and see what multiplies to 42. So like 1 times 42, 2 goes into 42, 21 times, 3 goes into 42, 14 I think, that looks right. 4 does not go into 42, 5 does not go into 42, 6 goes into 42, 7 times. So these are all of the things that multiply to 42, and either one of these pairs can also get me negative 13 or it can't. If it does, it's factorable and it's going to go fast. If it is not, if you do not see any pairs that work, then you have to use quadratic formula. So I'll show you, like, just going down here. This one, there is a pair. If you've been looking while I've been talking, you probably found it, the one that'll get you 13. It's 6 and 7. But because it's supposed to be a negative 13, they just both need to be negative. So you get negative 6 and negative 7 is negative 13. So if you factor it, you have x minus 6 and x minus 7, which, when you set them equal to 0, you would just add 6 to both sides or add 7 to both sides, and you get x equals 6 and x equals 7. And that's the answer right there. So, like I said, factoring, if you know what to do, it goes pretty fast. If you wanted to use quadratic formula, I'll go ahead and do that in blue over here or something. It is equal to 0, so that means this 1 right here is a, so a is 1. B is negative 13. C is 42. So the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and I need to extend that because it's over everything. That is an a, hard to see, my apologies. So negative b, this is b, so negative b would be a positive 13, square root. From here on out, I strongly suggest you square b in your head. Negative 13 squared would be a positive 169, because anything squared is positive. And then minus 4 times a times c, like so, divided by 2 times a, which is just 1. So you get 13 plus or minus the square root of something. And to be honest, my big suggestion to you guys is just to use a calculator on that part. It's going to go a lot faster if you take the thing right here and you just plug it straight in a calculator. It's just better to not risk it. So if you do 169 minus 4 times 1 times 42, and just do it all in one go. Because otherwise people sometimes do, oh, distribute the 4, or hey, negative, positive stuff. Who knows? If you just do it like that, it's like, oh yeah, it's 1, boop, done. No more thinking than that, and it's over 2. Because 2 times 1 is 2. However, you can take the square root of 1. It's an actual number. What is the square root of 1? If you said 1, yay. Like so. Just keep in mind, you can actually do this. 13 plus 1 is 14. And 14 over 2 is 7. And you could also subtract. 13 minus 1 is 12. And 12 divided by 2 is 6. And look, what a coincidence. We got the exact same thing as before. It's not a coincidence. It's math. It works. Let's check out number 6. Number 6, there is no choice. You can't factor this because there's all these parentheses stuff going on. Plus, the easy way to tell that it's going to be like, I don't want to say regular, but like a different type of factoring problem is that there's only one x. That's it. There's only one x here. This one had 2 over here. There's an x there and an x there. But if there's one x, then you can get x by itself. You just do some algebra, adding to both sides, subtracting to both sides, multiplying both sides, dividing both sides, square rooting or squaring both sides, until eventually x is by itself. So we're going to be getting x by itself. So we need to get rid of the 2, the 3, the 2, the 3, and the 2. You just have to know what order. And as a general rule of thumb, you want to get rid of the stuff furthest away from the x first. So like the 2 is closest, so you'll get rid of that last. So closest is the 2, then the 3, then this 2, then the 3, and the farthest array is that 2. So you need to get rid of this 2 first. Since it is adding, subtracting, you will add 2 to get rid of it, and you get negative 36. And in the next step, you want to get rid of this 3. Since this is 3 times that stuff, you would divide by 3 to get rid of it. So you get negative 2x plus 3 squared equals negative 12. Then it's squared. The opposite of squaring is square rooting. And since you square rooted both sides, you need to put a plus or minus. So the square root gets rid of the square. And I'm going to do a little thing right here where if you're taking the square root of a negative, you can make it positive and put an I in front. So I'm just going to sneak it in there to save some space. But you can make it positive and put an I in front. So you would have plus or minus I root 12. Which, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are, you can simplify the square root of 12. So I'll just do that over here. The square root of 12 simplifies or splits up into 4 and 3, splits up into 2 and 2. So you look for 2 of a kind. Pair of 2's and a leftover 3. Pair of 2's and a leftover 3. So root 12 is this number. Because there's that I there, it's going to be plus or minus, and it's going to be the number first, then the letter. So it'll be 2i, and then the root 3. So because of that I on the outside, you keep the I on the outside, but numbers always come before letters, so 2i root 3. And I'm just going to let you know right now, the answer is going to look ugly. Math gets ugly sometimes. Just know that. Like, people might think, like, when they're solving, it's like, oh, I don't know what to do. More than likely, you do know what to do. You just don't want to do it. So, like, if I cover up this side, and I asked you to solve for x, it's like, how do you get this x by itself? How do you get rid of the 2 and the 3? And which do you get rid of first? Most people can say, subtract the 3, divide by negative 2. And that's correct. That is what you do. It's just when you do it, it's not going to be pretty. When you subtract 3, you can't actually subtract 3. All you can do is write down that minus 3, and people usually put it in front of the plus or minus. And then you divide by negative 2, which, once again, you can't really actually do. You can't divide any of these by negative 2, which means these cross out, and you get x equals this thing. And there you go. That's actually the answer. It is not pretty, but there you go. That is it. That is the answer. Okay. I'll try to do one more problem and then call it quits for this one. You have 2 choices again for this one. Either way, it's not equal to 0, so you have to subtract 15 first. And then you can factor it, or you can use the quadratic formula. And this time I'll use quadratic formula first, just to show you. B equals 7, C equals negative 15. So A, B, C. Quadratic formula again is right there. So negative B is negative 7 plus or minus the square root. B squared, do in your head. What is 7 squared? Minus 4AC, so minus 4AC all over 2 times A. And I'm going to get out Mr. Calculator. 49 minus 4 times 2 times negative 15. And 169. So negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 169 over 4. As it turns out, you can actually do the square root of 49. I'm sorry, square root of 169. It's an actual whole number. Sometimes it only reduces, sometimes it doesn't reduce at all. But in this case, you can actually write negative 7 plus or minus 13 over 4, like that. So just a 13. But just like the one above it, you can actually do this. You can do negative 7 plus 13 over 4, negative 7 minus 13 over 4. If I was to do the plus sign, negative 7 plus 13 is 6. So you would get 6 over 4, which is 3/2. Or if you did negative 7 minus 13, right, minus 13, you'd get negative 20 over 4, which is equal to negative 5. And there you go. Those are the 2 answers. I guess in the next video, I'll show you this problem again using factoring, and we'll do these next 3 problems, and then we got some more problems to go. Woo! I'm excited. I hope you're excited. I'll see you in a second.